the two kisses and the diverse ironic meanings. Luke chapter 7, verses 44 onwards. Then he turned toward the woman and said to Simon, "Do you see this woman? I came into your house. You did not give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman from the time I entered has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. Therefore I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. But whoever has been forgiven little loves little." Then Jesus said to her, "Your sins are forgiven." The other guests began to say among themselves, "Who is this who even forgives sins?" Jesus said to the woman, "Your faith has saved you. Go in peace." Luke chapter 22, verses 47 onwards. While he was still speaking, a crowd came up, and the man who was called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He approached Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus asked him, "Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" When Jesus' followers saw what was going to happen, they said, "Lord, should we strike with our swords?" And one of them struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his right ear. But Jesus answered, "No more of this." And he touched the man's ear and healed him. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, the officers of the temple guard, and the elders who had come for him, "Am I leading a rebellion that you have come with swords and clubs? Every day I was with you in the temple courts, and you did not lay a hand on me. But this is your hour when darkness reigns." So we see two different people kissing Jesus in two different circumstances, on two different occasions, with two different, perhaps opposite purposes. Both are coming from darkness, in a sense, because that woman was a sinful woman who kissed Jesus' feet. And Judas, as the narrative goes in Luke 22, has come from the dark place. He is led by the Satan. And Jesus says, after his act is completed, that this is your hour when darkness reigns. So here we see a profound mystery. One person who is a disciple of Jesus, a follower of Jesus, a close aid of Jesus, a confidant of Jesus, treasurer of Jesus' ministry, who handles all the money that comes to Jesus. He is turning out to be the son of the devil, a Satan in disguise. And on the other hand, we have this woman who lived all her life in sin. She did only sin, according to the certain Pharisee who was very certain about other people's sin, in whose house Jesus was dining. So this is what happened there. When one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, Jesus went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. A woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house. So she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. As she stood behind him at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. When the Pharisee who had invited Jesus saw this, he said to himself, "If this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner." Jesus answered him, "Simon, I have something to tell you." "Tell me, teacher," he said. Two people owed money to a certain money lender. One owed him 500 denarii and the other 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back, so he forgave the debts of both. Now which of them will love him more? Simon replied, "I suppose the one who had the bigger debt forgiven." "You have judged correctly," Jesus said. And we know the rest of the story, which I read for you already. So here, Jesus is using a story that relates to money. There was a money lender, and that money lender gave loans. And he gave loans to many people. There were two people, one got 500 denarii and the other got 50 denarii. Maybe the 500 guy had more property, so maybe he was doing a bigger business, we don't know. Neither of them had the money to repay him. So he forgave the debts of both. The moneylender was so nice that he forgave the debts of both. Now, which of them will love him more? Now, we know there are big businessmen in India today who love the banks more than small people, because the small people like farmers, they are coerced to pay their full amount, and many of them commit suicide because if they die, then their families would get some compensation which they can use for their livelihood. But if they continue to live, they will have to pay back the loans that they have taken from the banks. And the banks use sometimes very stringent measures to harass these people because they are poor and they cannot retaliate, they cannot fight back. So for these kind of people, banks are not so good. I mean, even if they forgive, like even if some great Modi ji kind of leader comes and says that we are forgiving many people's loans, of course there is a reason to be happy, but they would be happy in a moderate way. But when it comes to big guys, like 2,000 crores, 2,500 crores, crores and crores of rupees are forgiven by the banks. And they just write these things off finally because they cannot recover anything from these people. They are bankrupt, as they say, and they cannot take anything, though these people are living in luxury. And finally, those debts are forgiven completely. And once these debts are forgiven completely, these people, they love the banks. They love the banks. They love the government. They love this establishment very much. So it is a similar scenario here. Jesus is saying that there are two kinds of people here. And one person had a bigger loan forgiven. Who do you think would love more? Simon had no doubt. He knew that the person who had a bigger loan would be feeling more relief, and therefore that would be the person who would love the forgiver more. Now, in those times, Pharisees considered themselves as people who are set apart to work for God, to wait for God. And sometimes they were the moral police of that area. That is why perhaps this guy knows this woman and her sinful nature, because they were the ones who were trying to bring all those people who were going astray into sin and other things back by force, not by loving them, by force, by giving them more difficulties in their synagogues, by writing their names, by deleting their names, and those kind of things. So Pharisees were acting like kind of moral police. They were waiting for the Messiah to come. The Messiah would be like, Messiah is Jesus. Pharisee Simon doesn't know it, but the Messiah would be the person who would collect all Israel, gather all Israel together, and then form a formidable force, cleanse the temple of all the evils that were going on there. And Pharisees believed that the temple doesn't yet have the presence of God, and there is a lot of hypocrisy happening. The priests who are in charge are colluding with the Roman government, and they were not happy with the system. And these Pharisees, they wanted to live upright lives that reflected God's image. They wanted to do that which is right and just for others. But they made a show of it. They did everything to show others. And inside, they were like those whitewashed tombs, as Jesus would describe in other places, that inside you are filled with dry bones, but outside you give an impression of being completely whitewashed. You are not really white. You are filled with all kinds of deadly things. You are dead inside. You don't have the life that comes from God, the life that the Torah was supposed to bring, the life of sincere love and compassion for other people who are suffering, loving God more than anything else, sincerely loving others. The sincerely aspect is absent in their worship. They are doing it just for the sake of it, just to show that they are better people than other people. And now here we have this Pharisee who is, of course, full of himself, and he believes that he is very righteous, and he's the person, he and his kind of people are the people who would be there in the age to come. So their expectation is that this Messiah would come, and he would gather them, and then he would go against the Roman Empire, he would overturn the Roman rulers, and then Israel would be free from exile, God's presence would return, and after that, some point, the resurrection of the dead would happen, and when the resurrection of the dead would happen, he would be there, and all the other people who have been living righteously like him, saying long prayers and having the longer robes than others and having long scrolls to carry. These long people would be there, is their expectation. Now, he's almost certain that he would be there in the age to come, and he's also certain that this woman, who is the sinner, who is washing Jesus' feet, would not be there. So now, in the Pharisee's mind, it is like the cut and right, black and white. He can see it very clearly, whether Jesus knows it or not, but he knows that this woman who has been sinning all day, all night with many different men and has been caught in such sins, and these moral policing Pharisees may have tried their best to bring her back, or may have tried their best to help her out of the church or out of their synagogue, whatever it be. They are well aware that this woman is certainly going to hell and certainly would not be there in the age to come, along with the resurrected people, along with Abraham, Isaac, and the other patriarchs. That would be a table fellowship like Jesus is enjoying right now with the Pharisee in his home. There would be a table fellowship in the age to come where Jesus, the Lord, and all these people, Abraham, Isaac, and all those patriarchs, would be reclining and eating together, enjoying and resting. And that scene this man can see, and this woman is nowhere there. She cannot make it. There is no possibility, even remote possibility. But Jesus here is kind of, he's turning it upside down. The whole narrative, he's turning it upside down with a story. So he brings in this small story called the parable. And every parable has a punchline. So he asks that's the last line, which of them will love him more? There's a punchline here. So who do you think would love this moneylender more? So he says immediately that the one who had the bigger debt forgiven. So Jesus' style is unique. He would make his opponent say the truth, so that they cannot deny it. Now, in the next sentence, Jesus is going to bring this matter in a different light.